The world's oldest democracy, the United States of America, is voting to pick its new president. After a heated election campaign, Americans and the world have one question in their mind. Will it be Democratic candidate Kamala Harris or Republican candidate Donald Trump? In the high-stakes race to the United States, both the presidential candidates are neck and neck, and results could go in anyone's favor. The bitter rivals spent their final day of the campaign making their last case to voters. While Trump has allowed tax cuts, relief from inflation, safer border, amongst a host of other promises, Kamala Harris has appealed to working and middle class, vowing to continue fighting for them. She's also made caps on prescription drug costs for seniors, one of the main election planks. All right, let's go right across to Jessica Stone, who's joining us from the United States. Jessica, it's of course been a very, very heated election campaign this time round. Of course, the large question that many have on their minds is, given the kind of surveys that we've been seeing, there's some that suggest that Trump has surged ahead of Kamala Harris. Of course, I know it's a very, very difficult guess, but what's your wager on? What's the sense that you're getting?
Well, I just have to clarify something you said earlier before I answer your request. The United States is not the world's oldest democracy. It is one of the oldest democratic republics in the world. You think of ancient Greece and even Iceland that go back much farther than this country. And because it's a young democracy, we're still seeing a lot of the rules change about ballot counting and vote counting. And that goes to the answer to your question. We are getting more early voting this year than years past with the Republican Party, and that is already giving Donald Trump, if you heard his press conference that he was just in the middle of giving a few short minutes ago, a lot of confidence going into this election. And we have seen the polls, to your point, tighten in his favor. And really what may be happening there is the undecideds are starting to decide. There's only about 1% of the population who are undecided. There's also plenty of people who won't vote at all, especially if they don't like either one of these candidates. And we know that both of these candidates are at historic lows in terms of popularity. So as those 1% of undecideds begin to break for one side or the other, you're seeing it tighten, but you're still seeing that 1%, 2% in the polls apart. And I have to point out, too, you know, the polls have certainly been wrong in the past. They could be wrong now, so we always have to have that caveat. We won't really know where this election is headed until we have every vote counted. And going back to my earlier point about a young democracy, we are still changing the way we count votes. And so in some states, you're going to see that vote count start today. In other states, that vote count for the early vote has already started. And so they're coming into the count for today's votes with a bank of votes on their side. This is going to be the reason why it takes several days to get a result. It took several days last time. They've tweaked some more at the state level with the ballot counting and how people early vote. They're going to probably tweak some more after this ballot count, because more people are taking advantage of a longer voting period to exercise their democratic right.
Yeah. Jessica Stone, in fact, the star power that has been used by both candidates to the max. Last question to you. With this particular election, Malvika Jain also joining us, in fact, on the broadcast. But Jessica, very quickly, Taylor Swift, there has been, all kinds of celebrities, business persons such as Elon Musk, who've actually jumped into this entire campaign. It's been a very colorful one. It's not unusual, perhaps, to have celebrities come out and campaign, but this time it's been something quite different, hasn't it?
I don't know if I would say it's been quite different. I do think we've had the same celebrities come out on the left. I think what might be different is having someone like Elon Musk, who's not only a celebrity in terms of name recognition, he's an entrepreneur, and he's an entrepreneur that has a lot of government contracts and who has given access to literal types of technology that has helped shape global policy, like the war in Ukraine and like the connectivity issues after the volcanic eruption in Tonga. So I think that's the kind of celebrity that's really changing the narrative for some people.
Right.
And for the Trump people, they want to show that they have an entrepreneur on their side who's showing that a meritocracy like the United States capitalistic system can give people an opportunity. The celebrities on the other side are driving home the point that the Harris campaign wants to drive home, which is about reproductive rights. And that's what you've heard from Jennifer Lopez and the likes on the left.
All right. Jessica, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us with those updates. We'll keep coming back to you over the next few days as and when the results do roll out. Malvika, I'm going to request you to just hold on for a few minutes, because joining us at the moment is Harmeet Dhillon, Republican lawyer, and has been an advisor to President Trump in the past. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am, here on Times Now. We're speaking at a time when polling is underway in the United States. What's the mood like? who's going to be the 47th president of the United States of America, in your view?
Well, thank you for having me. I represent President Trump and the Trump campaign at my law firm. I'm here on the ground in Arizona, one of the battleground states in this election cycle. And right now, President Trump and the Republican side seems to be polling ahead. We've had great turnout from our side in early voting, and today is the election day. The election is going smoothly here in Arizona and in most of the battleground states. I would say the mood here in the United States, from my perspective, of course, I'm a little bit biased, being a lifelong Republican activist, but it seems to be much greater enthusiasm for the President Trump campaign and Republican candidates down the ticket compared to Kamala Harris, who seems to have struggled in her ability to connect with voters. She's had very short events, very few events. By contrast, yesterday, President Trump flew all over the country, had 4 different rallies, was out there campaigning until 2 a.m., making his closing argument, huge crowds. And so I'd say that enthusiasm gap is definitely supportive of our side. But of course, no one should get cocky. There could be massive voting today that upsets all of everybody's expectations. So overall, we feel really positive on our campaign.
Right. And Ms. Dhillon, you've also offered an ardas in front of thousands, including former U.S. President Donald Trump at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in July. There was also a lot of trolling that you faced for it. I'd like to ask you, how has your Sikh identity shaped your perspective as a leader in a country like the United States?
Well, so the trolling has been actually minimal, and inside the room in this year, as well as in 2016, when I also did ardas at the National Convention, it was incredibly supportive, and I have been very welcomed with my faith. There are a lot of Sikh activists in the party. There are a lot of Hindus and Muslims as well. So I'm proud to say that our party is extremely diverse and welcoming to different viewpoints. But the difference between our party and the Democrat Party is we don't believe in identity politics. That is, you can be who you are and practice your faith, but you aren't going to get ahead or get promoted based on diversity statistics or, as you call it, reserved status or quotas in India. And so that's a fundamental difference between our parties. We believe in individual meritocracy, and the other side believes in spoils according to statistics. And so in that sense, the beauty of this country, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I was born in Chandigarh. My father was a doctor, practiced in a rural county, and he was a Republican from the time that he could vote, because the Republican Party was the party of inclusion, was the party that was against slavery and segregation in the South where I grew up, and has been the party to give us the best economic opportunity as immigrants to keep more of our money, to invest in businesses. So as an entrepreneur, as an owner of a business and the founder of a nonprofit, as the head of my political operation, I'm really proud to say that I've felt nothing but welcomed, and I welcome so many more Sikhs into the party by that example of being proud of who I am.
Right. And with ongoing legal issues and controversies surrounding Donald Trump, including assassination attempts, how do you believe these factors influence voter trust and the legal landscape of the election?
Well, I think people are targeting President Trump because he is popular and because he poses a threat to the status quo in our country, in the sense of government overreach that we saw during COVID, that we've seen persistently throughout the Biden administration, government censorship, government control, but also corporate overreach and corporate control and big media. We have seen really, I think, interestingly in this election cycle, with as your prior speaker mentioned, Elon Musk just recently passed the 2-year anniversary of freeing the internet and really freeing the ability of citizens worldwide to be able to speak freely. Increasingly, Americans are not getting their media anymore from the news media, and that is a huge difference in how we're absorbing news and the opportunity of citizens to come forward and get their views heard. And so President Trump is really a once in a generation, once in a lifetime, some would say, iconoclast who has broken the mold of what a Republican politician looks like and has, I think, permanently changed our party and its apparatus. I'm a member of the Republican National Committee, which is the national governing body of the Republican Party. I have been for 8 years now. I'm in my 9th year. And Donald Trump's leadership has absolutely changed the face of the Republican Party nationally. Now, that is causing some dislocation amongst some of the older warmonger aspects of our party. That's why you see a couple of dinosaurs like Liz Cheney and others who are very upset that Donald Trump is against permanent global wars, is against that sort of cliched old style of the party. And that's also frustrating Democrats as well. So permanent wars may no longer be a feature of our face of our party and our country under President Trump. He's the only president in my lifetime who didn't start wars abroad and in fact was a leader in world peace. So that's what I look forward to in the next 4 years is more world peace, more freedom for citizens to speak online, less size of a government, less government control, and more opportunity for both immigrants like myself as well as all Americans.
Right. Also, Kamala Harris's candidacy as the first woman of color to run for president has been historic. How do you think her background and her identity has influenced voter turnout and engagement, particularly among women and minority communities?
Well, I think that the party hoped that those identity politics factors would translate to electoral success at the polls. I don't think that's actually how things have turned out. In fact, she is a really mediocre candidate. I've spent many hours online talking about her history and her exaggeration of her background and her history. And so the fact of the matter is Kamala Harris has gotten to where she is so far by playing that minority, that woman card. And I don't think that's really enough when you're talking about the future of the free world, the most powerful person in the free world. It isn't good enough to say I'm a woman and a minority and I've arrived and I've earned it. And I'll also say, having lived in San Francisco and met Kamala Harris many times, litigated against her office when she was the Attorney General, in fact, on behalf of a sick plaintiff in a landmark civil rights case, which I won. I will say that despite the fact that she is, quote unquote, Indian American when she wants to raise money from Indian Americans or African American when that checks the box, she's actually done nothing to advance either of those communities. I mean, you can look at her record. She had literally zero accomplishments to benefit our religious minorities, be they Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, from the Indian subcontinent. Zero. Okay. And then in terms of African Americans, her legacy as a prosecutor was, let me put as many people away as possible behind bars, including many minorities for petty crimes. That is why you're seeing a significant rise in the number of African American men who are supporting President Trump in this election cycle, because Kamala Harris is an opportunist. She doesn't stand for anything. When she thought it would benefit her career to run for Attorney General, she put away African American families, moms, and men into prison in record numbers compared to other prosecutors in the area. When she became the Attorney General, she flipped her position on issues like drug abuse, like you name it. Now she's in favor of letting criminals go free range. She's in favor of open borders in our country. And people in India know as well as anybody, open borders do not a country make. I am born in India. I cannot come to India and hang out indefinitely. I have to get a visa and I have to show up there and I have to leave when the visa is over. Kamala Harris has promoted an open border in this country, and that is unacceptable to most Americans. And so this was only an issue in the border states for many years. Because now these migrants have gone to New York and some of the wealthy areas and the Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, you're seeing American backlash against the open borders, the rapes, the murders, the quality of life crimes, the drug trafficking, the fentanyl that is impacting our cities and our rural areas throughout America. Right. So I don't think Americans want our country to become like, a third world country. That's like literally not why anybody came here. So I think that's going to be a big factor in today's election.
Right. Also, the Indian American community that has grown significantly in the United States, but there's still a perception that the community is underrepresented in national politics. What steps do you think should be taken to ensure that Indian Americans are more visible and more influential in shaping policy decisions, especially as we are going through the 2024 election polling, and of course in perhaps a day or two we'll find out who the next president is?
Well, I don't think there are any steps that should be taken affirmatively. I do think that Indian Americans should vote and should get involved. And so far in my youth, my parents had fundraisers at our home for Republican candidates in North Carolina when I was growing up, but that was really not done by very many Indian Americans. We then became more of like the wealthy donors, the piggy banks. And now actually I would say it's a pretty healthy number of Indian American Democrats are in Congress. I think we definitely need to see more Republicans, but we have some stars on our side as well. Vivek Ramaswamy is an excellent example. Certainly I've been proud to be the lawyer for a president and former president and future president, and first Indian American member of the Republican National Committee. So I encourage my fellow people from the Indian subcontinent to get involved in politics. Don't just be a donor, but you can't just go for the glamour positions of running for governor. We had a gubernatorial Indian American candidate in California many years ago. But go vote, go run for city council, for school board, for board of supervisors, for mayor, for state legislature, and then maybe for statewide office and eventually federal office. So those are the steps. There's no shortcuts in politics.
All right. Thank you so much, Harmeet, Dhillon, for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, and Malvika, in fact, continues to be with us. Malvika, thank you so much for staying on, and thank you for your patience. But what really is going on at the moment, Malvika? How soon do you expect this time around? And, there are many questions that people here in India want to know. Which regime or which president will be better for India, Trump or Kamala?
Well, we don't know who the person will be, but as far as their personalities are concerned, there is some kind of clarity on the path that they are taking as far as policy steps are going to be taken when it comes to the issue of immigration. As Dhillon was also mentioning, Kamala Harris is likely to have a more lenient stance. But when it comes to India, most of the Indian immigrants are legal immigrants. They're documented immigrants. And both Trump and Harris are in favor of legal immigrants. There is, of course, the issue of how many legal immigrants would both of them will be permitting in the country. And Harris, Democrats traditionally have been more lenient towards that. But it remains to be seen what policy decisions will be taken as far as immigration is concerned. On the issue of healthcare and economy, those have been also top policy and agenda issues in this election. And for both of them, both the candidates have their own approaches. For economy, Trump has indicated that there might be additional tariffs that might be levied, and that would not be good for a country like India. But let me remind everybody that it might not be practical to levy as many tariffs as he's talking about, and it might be more of a political rhetoric that we are hearing from him, because already there is so much inflation in the US that if you add more tariffs, prices are going to skyrocket in the country. So as far as India is concerned, both Harris and Trump are likely to take a favorable stance towards India as a strategic partner in the areas of geopolitical cooperation and economic cooperation. But at the same time, they're likely to draw a line because eventually every country has to look out for itself.
Malvika, we wish you all the best for the next 48 hours. It's going to be a lot of hard work for you as well on ground. You've been reporting relentlessly over the last several weeks for us. And of course, the next 48 hours, very, very crucial as to when we'll get to know who the next president of the United States is concerned. Thanks so much for joining us indeed this evening. And there's some news coming in at this point of time. Donald Trump has spoken about attempts on his life a short while back, even as voting's underway. Let's quickly listen in.
I think Secret Service has been a little bit tougher, to put it mildly. I see more machine guns than I've ever seen in my life. We're surrounded by, I feel very confident with Secret Service. I think they've stepped up. Look, for a long time, they didn't give us the help. They didn't give us the assets, as they say, the manpower, woman power. They didn't give it to us. And we'd have rallies. You saw the rallies, 50, 60,000 people. And I'd have less people than Joe Biden, who had 5 people show up, and I'd have 55,000 people show up, and I had fewer people than him. So they should have done a much better job. And frankly, the president should make a very strong statement to the outside world.
All right, so that's President Trump speaking about the assassination attempts and the security apparatus provided to him. We'll be, of course, live from 5:30 in the morning for our coverage of the counting of the United States elections. Do join us because Times Now and CBS have partnered. We'll be bringing you all the latest analysis, the fastest updates, and all the breaking down of the various swing states and other details and explaining the United States elections. Do keep watching us on Times Now for more on that.